11.5 million documents, 2.6 terabytes of data. The biggest leak in history. It exposed presidents, prime ministers, dictators, drug lords, and billionaires hiding trillions of dollars in secret offshore accounts. Some of them went to prison. Some of them resigned in disgrace. And one journalist who investigated it was murdered by a car bomb. But here's what they're not telling you. Most of the people exposed are still free. The money is still hidden, and the system that enabled it all is still running. Welcome to Unresolved Case, April 3rd, 2016. The International Consortium of Investigative Journalists releases the Panama Papers. Overnight, the world learns that the rich and powerful have been using a Panamanian law firm called Mossack Fonseca to hide their wealth. Offshore shell companies, secret bank accounts, tax havens, all perfectly legal, they claim. But the documents tell a different story. Money laundering, sanctions, evasion, arms dealing, drug trafficking. This wasn't tax planning. This was organized crime at the highest level. So how did they get away with it for so long? Mossack Fonseca wasn't some small operation. Founded in 1977, they created over 214,000 shell companies in tax havens around the world. The British Virgin Islands, Panama, the Seychelles, Samoa. These weren't businesses. They were legal fictions, anonymous entities designed to hide who really owned the money. And Mossack Fonseca asked very few questions. You want to hide $1 billion? They had a package for that. You want to evade international sanctions, take an air wall. You want to launder money from corruption or crime? They had done it thousands of times before. But here's what's chilling. Mossack Fonseca wasn't alone. They were just one firm, one of hundreds operating the same way. And according to the documents, they weren't even the biggest. So if this is what one mid-sized firm was doing, what about the rest? How much money is really hidden offshore? The estimates are staggering. Between 21 and 32 trillion dollars. That's trillion with a T, hidden from tax authorities, hidden from investigators, hidden from the public. Who controls all that money? The leak came from inside. Someone at Mossack Fonseca, we still don't know who, contacted a German newspaper, Zeitung. They called themselves John Doe. They sent files, millions of them. Emails, contracts, passport, copy, corporate records. Everything. The newspaper couldn't handle it alone, so they brought in the ICIJ. Over 370 journalists from 80 countries spent a year analyzing the documents in secret because they knew what would happen if the wrong people found out. Were they right to be afraid? When the papers went public, the names shocked the world. Vladimir Putin's closest associates, Xi Jinping's brother-in-law, the prime ministers of Iceland, Pakistan, and the UK, the kings of Saudi Arabia and Morocco, soccer star Lionel Messi, drug lords from Mexico, arms dealers from Russia, FIFA officials, everyone. But here's the strange part. Very few Americans, the biggest economy in the world, home to more billionaires than anywhere else, and hardly anyone from the US was named. Why? Was it because Americans don't use offshore accounts? Or was it because they use different firms? Let's talk about the crimes the papers exposed. In Azerbaijan, the ruling family looted billions, while the country stayed poor. The documents showed how they did it. Shell companies buying real estate in Dubai, luxury goods in London, private jets. The dictator's daughters owned gold mines they claimed didn't exist. Government contracts paid to companies they secretly controlled. This wasn't corruption. This was state capture, and Mossack Fonseca facilitated all of it. Did they know? Of course, they knew. Then there's the sanctions evasion. North Korea was under international sanctions, banned from the global financial system. But the Panama Papers showed they used shell companies to buy weapons, to sell weapons to move money. Syria too. Iran. The sanctions were supposed to stop them, but with the right shell company, the right bank, the right law firm, the sanctions meant nothing. Who else was helping them? The drug cartels loved Mossack Fonseca. Mexican cartels, Colombian cartels. The documents showed how they laundered billions. Dirty money from drugs, kidnapping, and murder came in. Clean money came out. Invested in legitimate businesses, real estate, hotels, casinos. And once it was clean, it was untouchable. The cartels became businessmen. Their money became investments, and Mossack Fonseca got their cut. How many people died so this money could be laundered? But the most explosive revelation was about world leaders. Sigmundur Davíð Gunnlaugsson, the Prime Minister of Iceland, had millions hidden in offshore accounts, while Iceland was still recovering from the financial crisis. While regular Icelanders lost everything, their Prime Minister was hiding money in the British Virgin Islands. He resigned within days. But that's the exception. Most of the leaders exposed stayed in power. Why Nawaz Sharif, the Prime Minister of Pakistan, was shown to own luxury London apartments through offshore companies. He claimed he didn't know. The documents proved he was lying. He was eventually disqualified from office. But it took years, and Ebon's family stayed in politics. His brother became Prime Minister. So what did the Panama Papers actually change? Then there's Putin. His name isn't in the documents. Of course, it isn't. But his closest friends are. Sergei Roldagin, a cellist, supposedly owns billions in offshore accounts. A musician with no business experience, suddenly worth billions. The money trail leads back to state contracts. 2 banks connected to the Kremlin. 2 deals that only make sense if someone very powerful was involved. Everyone knows who that someone is, but proving it is different from knowing it. What happens to journalists who try? April 16th, 2016. Daphne Caruana Galicia, a Maltese investigative journalist, starts reporting on the Panama Papers. She finds connections between Malta's Prime Minister and Mossack Fonseca. She exposes corruption, money laundering. She names names. She doesn't stop. Even when threatened, Eben wins sweat. Even when her bank accounts are frozen. On October 16th, 2017, she gets in her car, turns the ignition. The car bomb detonates instantly. She's killed. The investigation into her murder is ongoing. But the people she exposed are still in power. Who ordered the hit? The leak destroyed Mossack Fonseca. Sort of. They claimed they were victims, that they'd done nothing wrong, that offshore companies are legal, and technically, they're right. Having an offshore company isn't illegal. Using it to evade taxes, launder money, or break sanctions is. But proving intent is hard, especially when the whole system is designed for plausible deniability. Mossack Fonseca shut down in 2018. But the partners didn't go to prison. They just started new firms. Same services, different name. Problem solved. Here's what's infuriating. After the biggest leak in history, after exposing massive corruption, after proving that world leaders were criminals, very few people faced consequences. Some low-level employees got arrested. Some minor officials lost their jobs. A handful of prosecutions in a handful of countries. But the billions? Still hidden. The shell companies, still operating. The tax havens, still open for business. So, what was the point? The leak also revealed how banks enabled it all. SBCan, Credit Suisse, UBSan, Societe Generale. They knew their clients were using shell companies. They knew the money was suspicious. But they processed the transactions anyway, because the fees were too good. Because asking questions would cost them clients. Because everyone else was doing it. When the papers came out, the banks claimed ignorance, said they'd tightened procedures. But did they? Or did they just get better at hiding it? Let's talk about what wasn't in the Panama Papers. 11.5 million documents sounds like everything. But it's not. It's one firm. For 40 years, there are hundreds of other firms. Thousands of other shell companies. Millions of other transactions. The Panama Papers showed us the tip of the iceberg. The rest is still underwater. Still hidden. Still protected. How deep does this really go? And here's the terrifying part. The system is legal. Tax havens are legal. Shell companies are legal. Offshore accounts are legal as long as you declare them. As long as you pay taxes, as long as you're not laundering money. But the whole point of the system is to make it impossible to prove you're doing anything wrong. Layers of anonymity, jurisdictions that don't cooperate, banks that don't ask questions. It's designed to be untouchable, and it's working. John Doe, the whistleblower, released a statement. They said they leaked the documents because the injustice was too great, because the system was rigged against ordinary people, because the wealthy and powerful were stealing from everyone else, and they were right. But here's the question. Who is John Doe? Are they safe? Did Mossack Fonseca find them? Did the people exposed in the papers? We don't know. They've never been identified. Maybe that's how they stayed alive. After the Panama Papers, there were other leaks. The Paradise Papers in 2017. The Pandora Papers in 2021. Each one bigger than the last. Each one exposing more corruption, more hidden wealth, more powerful people, and each time the same thing happens. Outrage for a week. A few investigations. A few resignations. Then nothing. The system continues. The money keeps flowing. The offshore world keeps growing. Why can't we stop it? Because the people who could stop it benefit from it. Politicians hide their money offshore. Corporations avoid taxes using shell companies. Banks make billions facilitating it. The lawyers, the accountants, the consultants, they all get paid. There's no incentive to change. And the few people who try, they get sued. They get threatened. They get killed. Like Daphne Caruana, Calicia, like other journalists who've died investigating corruption, the system protects itself. Here's what the Panama Papers really revealed. There are two sets of rules. One for the rich and powerful, one for everyone else. If you don't pay taxes, you'll go to hell. If a billionaire doesn't pay taxes, they hire Mossack Fonseca. If you commit fraud, you're a criminal. If a corporation commits fraud, it's a business strategy. If you hide money, it's illegal. If they hide money, it's wealth management. The game is rigged. Always has been. So what's still hidden? Everything that wasn't in those 11.5 million documents. The other firms. The other tax havens. The other billions and trillions. Some estimate that offshore wealth represents 10% of global GDP. That's wealth that could fund schools, hospitals, infrastructure. Instead, it's sitting in accounts in the Cayman Islands, helping nobody except the people hiding it. The Panama Papers prove something we all suspected but couldn't prove. The world's elite operate by different rules. They don't just break laws, they reshape the system so that what they're doing isn't illegal. They buy politicians who write tax loopholes. They fund think tanks that defend offshore accounts. They hire PR firms to spin the story. And when someone exposes them, they either ignore it or destroy the messenger. How do we fight a system this powerful? Mossack Fonseca is gone. But the industry thrives. New firms popped up immediately, offering the same services, the same secrecy, the same plausible deniability. Because there's too much money at stake. Too many powerful people who need to hide their wealth. Too many criminals who need to launder their money. The demand hasn't changed. Only the supply, and the money keeps moving. Right now, as you're watching this, billions are being transferred into shell companies. Hidden from authorities, hidden from the public, sheltered from taxes. Some of it is legal, some of it isn't. But all of it is secret, and that secrecy is the whole point. Because once money is hidden, it's hard to find, hard to track, hard to tax, hard to say even when you know it's there. If this investigation showed you that the biggest crime is the one that's technically legal, smash that subscribe button. Comment below which financial scandal we should expose next, and share this with anyone who still thinks the system is fair. Because the Panama Papers didn't just expose corruption, they exposed the truth that terrifies the powerful. We know where the money is hidden. We know how they're doing it. We know who's involved, and we're not going to forget. This is Unresolved Casefiles. where the biggest heist in history is still happening.